this exciting episode, it's the case of the bartered bikini, only with cosmetics. And Wally is named Peter, and Whit Bissell is here and appears shirtless. I guess a bid to be the centerfold for Judas Goat Monthly. It's Perry Mason, Season 4, Episode 5, The Case of the Lavender Lipstick. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose, pretty simple, provide an audio companion to every episode of television's greatest legal drama, Perry Mason. Each episode, we give you a summary of the plot. We even compare plots with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel, if the episode was an adaptation. We give you a little trivia, reveal the episode's theme, and revel in a Perry proverb. That's a pearl of wisdom from the man himself. Finally, we head to the water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of our fave legal cruise adventures. But first, say it with me, to the Law Library! Each time we visit the Law Library, we discuss a legal conundrum from Perry's case that helps us set future legal precedents. In this trip to the Law Library, we discuss subpoenas, as two of them are crucial to the episode's plot. First, there's our own Paul Drake, who saw the defendant's car outside the crime scene.
You didn't tell him anything about Karen Lewis?
Oh, I wanted to talk to you. After all, if she's guilty, it's one thing. But if she isn't, I sure don't want to be the one to get her in a jam.
From your actions, I take it you realize you're a fugitive from justice.
Yeah, well, don't make jokes. But I figure you will get me off in return for what I've dug up for you.
Then there's Gabriel Rawson, the episode's chief villain. He gets served a subpoena by Paul while enjoying a sauna break.
Max?
Uh-huh. You made me miss my plane for nothing, so help me, I'll have your scalp. Now, what's this matter of...
I think you'll find out at 2 o'clock this afternoon, Mr. Rawson. That's when the subpoena calls for you to appear in court. And you'd better hurry. You've just got a few minutes.
Now, what exactly is a subpoena? It's a court-ordered demand that you show up to testify and tell the entire truth. You don't show up, you're going to get a fine. You might just get placed in jail for contempt. The pertinent California Penal Code is Section 166, and as of 2023, that code section says that contempt of court is considered a misdemeanor, which could result in up to 6 months in county jail, a fine of $1,000, or both. Stick that in your cosmetic cream and use it, Gabriel Rawson. Now, let's get to the plot of this episode. The Case of the Lavender Lipstick. Ah, yes, the highly competitive, cutthroat world of estrogenic cosmetics. You know it well. Well, so do Peter Nichols and Karen Lewis. And they also know the close bond that comes from trying to get estrogenic lipstick to turn out lavender.
Well, you helped me with the new dusting powder last month.
You did that all by yourself.
And you helped me with the tear-proof eyeshadow when I first came here to work, didn't you?
Could be I have a weakness for lady chemists.
Well, here's wet blanket Charles Knudsen. Knudsen?
Hello, Mr. Knudsen.
Charles Newton, the night watchman.
Your guess is as good as mine. There's a K at the beginning of it. That will be important later. Wink. He's the night watchman, and he's running roughshod over a tender moment between Peter and Karen.
Mr. Pompey would like to see you.
Now?
Yes, miss. Hiya, Mr. Nichols.
Knudsen?
But as bad as old CK is, he's a prince compared to the pawing satyr that is Max Pompey, a sexual harassment suit waiting to happen.
Mr. Pompey.
Max Pompey.
He's going to blackmail Karen with some bogus evidence that she's been stealing from the company? For shame, Maxwell.
We'll make out fine.
Let go of me. Stop it. Let go of me.
Well, Karen gives Max the El Kabong and leaves under threat of reprisals. Enter Myra Heston, who proceeds to make fun of Max, as she should.
We'll make out fine, Karen. Oh, I know how you love to chase girls around this office, but I didn't think you'd go as far as framing some poor thing just to get a handhold on her.
I found those things in her desk. You were listening. You heard her say she'd been out with Rawson twice.
Karen Lewis could no more steal from this company or sell its formulas than she could fall for a goat like you.
That's enough.
But Myra proceeds to dial up the ick factor when I thought that meter was already as high as it could go, when Max says things like this.
You haven't forgotten how, have you?
There's only one reaction. Ew. Well, the backstory here is that Caress Cosmetics, that's where Peter and Karen and Max and Myra work. Well, they have a rival fronted by Gabriel Rawson. It appears that Max is working on the sly for old GR. He's certainly accusing Karen of working on the sly for Gabe. And as for Myra, she's hooked up with Gabriel too.
Gabriel, I'm going to be a little late tonight. Max Pompey. Yes, I talked to him. He found the evidence. Yes, darling. Things are moving along just fine.
Peter Nichols has the good sense to get Perry in on the whole thing. Perry, he likes himself a crowd, so he invites Paul to the shindig.
I suppose you go over it all again, Mr. Nichols, from the beginning, for Mr. Drake's benefit. How long was it before you began to worry about Miss Lewis?
Now we meet Silas Vance, the crotchety but lovable owner of Caress Cosmetics. He's soft on Karen and won't hear anything bad about her. In fact, he clues Karen in on something.
You see, something happened, well, that I don't want to talk about.
Well, I would. Pompey told me all about it, and it's just so much poppycock. You come on down here. I'm in your office. Between us, we'll string a real crook up by the heels.
Meanwhile, Whit Bissell and Walter Coy decide to lose their shirts in a steam bath. It really is a bizarro version of the barter bikini. Well, when Karen shows up to meet with Silas, old CK is knocked out cold and Silas is dead under a desk. Uh-oh, you know who's gonna get charged with the crime, right?
I never thought of looking under a drawer. Shot by K.A. K.A. Just the start of a name. K.A. Karen Lewis.
Plus, Paul was there at the crime scene, which means, you guessed it, a subpoena. We've got a new DA in town who's putting together the prosecution's case. Perry's kind enough to invite his new sparring partner to enjoy the lunch recess. Not kind enough to invite him to lunch.
Have a nice lunch, Mr. Helmy.
Perry uncovers the secret undergirding the case that Karen Lewis's father, a disgraced cosmetics man who died in jail, was business partners with Silent Vance when old Cy was going under a different name. That's why Silas Vance cared so much about Karen, provided for her so handsomely in his will, and kept Max Pompey in his employ because old Max knew the truth. Well, all this matters because you know who wanted Silas's corporation? Gabriel Rawson. So Paul goes to the sauna, plants the subpoena on him, and before Gabe can giddy up out of town, he's spilling the beans in court.
You reasoned that in order to gain possession of Caress Cosmetics, you had to discredit Karen Lewis in Mr. Vance's eyes. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Then Perry does something odd. He goes back to Trag. An incriminating bit of evidence, remember, involved what Silas Vance was writing in lipstick underneath the desk. But Perry presents an alternative interpretation. Trag knows where to take it from there.
Now, suppose Silas Vance had started to write, and then as his strength failed, he did this. Couldn't that second letter have been one of two letters, Lieutenant? Couldn't that second letter have been an N instead of an A?
Shot by K.N. Shot by Knudsen. Charles Knudsen, the night watchman.
Dabbs Greer, no!
I was stealing his formulas. He said he was going to send me to jail. And I couldn't have that either. I couldn't. I didn't want to kill him. But Mr. Vance started to phone the police. And I just grabbed him. And he started yelling. And I couldn't have that. I couldn't have any of it. I just couldn't.
Karen Lewis's final question for Perry involves the clock, and he's got an answer.
Seems to me a clock has been pretty important in your life.
I don't understand about the clock. Why didn't Mr. Knudsen break it before I got there?
He didn't break the clock then because he didn't know exactly when you would get there. He wanted to be sure he had the time right.
Speaking of clocks, it's about time to get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is a deep dive on an actor or actress who guest starred in the episode. And finally, a Perry is something we learn about our intrepid hero. Our Paul prompt for this episode involves the special cosmetics they're crafting over there at Caress.
Who ever heard of an estrogenic lipstick?
Silas Vance.
First, estrogenic cream. Now, estrogenic lipstick. I confess, I'm boggled. Never heard of it. So my Paul prompt is this. Is this product feature ripped from real cosmetics? Are there cosmetics out there using estrogenic as an adjective? What is its appeal? Why isn't it a thing now, as far as I can tell? Did the writers just make it up? I'll be interested to read what you find. Our Della for this episode, it's gotta be Dabbs Greer, a.k.a. Mr. CK.
Because he said he'd tell. And I couldn't have that.
Here's 10 about Dabbs. A little Dabbs'll do ya. Number 1, Dabbs Greer, born April 2, 1917, Fairview, Missouri. Grew up Anderson, Missouri. Originally named Robert William, but chose the professional name Dabbs Greer to avoid confusion with the already established actor Will Geer. Number 2, Dabbs. Relatively normal childhood. Father was a pharmacist. Mother taught speech privately. Dabbs was an only child, was quite ill at the age of 10, led to him receiving special care from his parents. His dad made a notable donation to his bank account when he was a struggling actor in Hollywood. Number 3, after graduating from high school, Dabbs attended Drury College in Springfield, Missouri. He studied pre-med initially, but later switched to clinical psychology. Then, when he struggled with those subjects and needed to make a living, he decided to use his English major and interest in drama to become a teacher. Number 4, his interest in drama and showbiz fostered from an early age due to his mother's non-professional acting. His first brush with the film industry was in 1938 when he played 3 minor roles in the film Jesse James. Then after working as a high school teacher, he joined the staff at the, wait for it, Pasadena Playhouse in 1943. In 1948, Dabbs got his first movie work in Hollywood through, guess who, Raymond Burr, who he starred with in a play. Director Anthony Mann offered him a role in a picture based on the French Revolution, released as The Black Book that same year. Number 5, Dabbs almost missed the part in Mann's film due to oversleeping, but he made it to the set just in time, and that marked the start of a successful television and film career as a character actor. Number 6, Greer gained valuable experience from his work on television's Fireside Theater, a half-hour anthology show. In the early days of television, he said pay was low, but the technical staff taught actors important lessons about lighting, sound quality, continuity. Television provided opportunities for Greer to play diverse roles and avoid typecasting, and he appreciated the recognition factor the show offered, often with curtain calls that featured an actor's picture and name. Number 7, Greer is probably best remembered by many as Reverend Robert Alden, who he played for 9 years on Little House on the Prairie.
Times like these test our faith. Why does God allow a man like Lavender to exist? Why doesn't the Lord intercede in our behalf? Now, we're good Christians. Why are we the ones to suffer at the hands of a man like this?
He also played a reverend in the show Picket Fences from 1992 to 1996. Other television shows that he appeared on: Dick Van Dyke Show, Andy Griffith Show, Lone Ranger, Wagon Train, Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, Dr. Kildare, 8 episodes of Perry Mason, The Untouchables, Superman, Spin City. Here's a funny story from Greer, this is number 8, about typecasting and the life of a character actor. Despite not being typecast in the 50s and 60s, he did mention that he ended up playing several minister characters, particularly after his role on the Little House on the Prairie. He mentioned where he got offered a role that would have involved him in a compromised scene, and he turned it down because he didn't want his public image to begin clashing with the image many people had in their minds of him as a minister. And then when he got offered the role of a minister for the show Picket Fences, he agreed. He reflected on, despite the fact that he'd been a teacher in real life, he was rarely cast as a teacher, and how his early college pursuits in pre-med didn't lead to doctor roles, which he mentioned with a laugh. Number 9, never married, had no survivors. Number 10, Dabbs Greer, died April 28th, 2007 in Pasadena, California. What do we learn about Perry, our intrepid hero, in this episode? Well, how about his ability to impersonate others? Tell us all about it, Perry.
How you got Mr. Rawson to meet Paul at that steam room?
You mean instead of taking the plane to New York? I just called him at the airport. It was so noisy there he could hardly hear.
You should have heard him trying to sound like Max Pompey.
Told Rawson I had to see him at once, and he said, same place as last time. And I said, last time? And he said, the Allerton steam room, you dummy.
Earlier this season, Perry was hitting up Jim Ferris with fake letters. Now he's hitting up corporate execs with phone fake-outs. In order to catch a corrupt executive, he'll have to impersonate a corporate lackey. The theme for this episode is, of course, betrayal. The true blue ones, Karen and Peter, of course, Perry, Paul, Della. The traitors, well, Myra herself calls Max a Judas, but it takes one to know one, my. And old Gabriel Rawson ain't exactly Mr. Honesty over here. What about Silas? Well, he and Karen's dad flipped a coin, and when he made a promise to Karen Lewis's father to watch over Karen, he kept his word. But old CK, Charles K., he might compliment Karen here.
Well, now, she's a good little housekeeper. She keeps her table and her cabinet locked proper, if that's what you mean.
But in the end, he's got to confess he betrayed Miss Lewis and the entire company for personal reasons. And I can't have that, Mr. C. Now, let's hear a Perry proverb. If you're a fan of the show, you're used to hearing Perry say that he'll go the limit for his clients. But ultimately, Perry's devoted to justice. Here's what he tells Paul in this episode.
This is a murder, Paul. There are limits as to how far we can go in protecting a client.
A wise man knows his limits. Let's see if Perry can keep his own advice. And with that, it's time to grab a swig from the water cooler.
Now, there is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each time we visit the water cooler, we give you deleted scenes, humorous outtakes that didn't quite make the final cut. Thanks to listener Jason Lucky for these 3. Number 1, Silas Vance leading an office Pictionary session with some lavender lipstick as the pen. Number 2, Pompey, Rawson, and Heston ordering food and toasting more things like the new LA Dodgers, the new interstate, or wearing shirts. Number 3, Perry quizzes Trag to see if there are any other words that start with the letters K-A. 2 syllables, sounds like. Our Paul prompt for the case of the singular double involved campaign finance reform after Whitney Locke got all that furtive cash.
You insist then that the $60,000 campaign contribution was legitimate and not a bribe?
Certainly.
Then why all the elaborate precautions to ensure secrecy? Why all the surreptitiousness, all the furtiveness? Or do you customarily receive your campaign contributions in that manner, Mr. Locke?
Aunt Mai and my dad were on the research case. Aunt Mai reports this about federal campaign finance reform. President Theodore Roosevelt recognized the need for it as early as 1905. Congress enacted statutes between 1907 and 1966. And then in 1971, the Federal Election Campaign Act imposed stricter disclosure requirements. In 1974, amendments set limits on contributions. And in 2010, the Supreme Court Citizens United ruling changed campaign finance restrictions, allowing unlimited spending by corporations and outside groups. That's a good mini history lesson. My dad found some details about California campaign finance reform. 1893, California enacts the Purity of Elections Law for campaign finance disclosure. There was no requirement for financial disclosure of lobbying activities, however. And in the 1940s, a man named Artie Samish, S-A-M-I-S-H, now considered by many the most powerful individual lobbyist in the history of California, became a symbol for the need for reform. 3-term California Governor Earl Warren, who my dad notes, future Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, titular head of the commission that investigated the JFK assassination, said of Artie, on matters that affect his clients, Artie unquestionably has more power than the governor. In 1949, the Lobbying Control Act was adopted to regulate lobbying practices and curb the influence exerted by men like Artie. These laws remained in place until the mid-1970s. Thanks for doing that deep dive, y'all. Now, let's get to a listener letter. This week, I received a nice note from Lauren McConnell, a professor of English at Rutgers University, who says, I recently began watching Perry Mason, the original, was so wrapped up in it that I looked for podcasts regarding the show, which is where I found you. I love your production, and I'm sad that I've surpassed your reach of commentary on the show as I've been binging both. I'm waiting for new coverage with bated breath. Thanks so much for the note, Lauren. Apologies for the audio foul up on the episode last week. Thanks to the listeners who informed me about it and patiently tried the episode again when I worked out the kinks. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Have a comment on the episode or the pod in general, you can drop me a line at theperrypod@gmail.com. Next time, we get a proto-NCIS case as Perry tackles the case of the Wandering Widow. Join us, won't you? Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking that Park Avenue beat!